Chapter 350. Perhaps it had once questioned whether his heart was black or not. It had also once thought of swallowing him alive. But in the end, the zombie king only crushed the beating heart into minced meat. He threw the corpse that had lost its heart into the zombie crowd and let the zombies eat it. The zombie king covered its chest and watched silently. Only when the corpse was left with only bones and bits of flesh on the bones did it let out a roar. Those zombies who had received the order retreated like the tide, scattering until they could no longer be seen. Only the zombie king was left in a daze. At the moment when it got its revenge, it didn't feel happy or sad, only confused. It suddenly recalled some scenes in its mind. It fell from a tall building. It didn't know if it was lucky or unlucky. It fell into a flower bed and broke its leg. It couldn't tell where it was, and then it was bitten by a zombie. After it became a zombie, it wandered around with many zombies, eating people and its own kind. In the end, it became the top group of its kind. It seemed to have remembered something and returned to the first floor where it fell. From the layers of bones, it picked up a skeleton that had been eaten clean, leaving only the bones. When it was windy and rainy, it would hide in some abandoned houses with the skeleton. When it was in a fight, it would carefully protect the skeleton. Even if it was injured, it wouldn't let the skeleton be damaged. For this reason, it was seriously injured several times. Because of this, it learned to hide in the dark and wait for both sides to be injured. Then it would go out and pick up the ready-made ones. It remembered that it had enemies, people that it hated to the core. But now, its enemies were dead. They died without an intact body. It didn't know what to do next. Nowhere to go? Xiaoqing lifted the zombie king's chin and carefully observed its neck. It was badly rotten. It should be the wound where the zombie first bit it. The zombie king was highly vigilant towards its own kind, but it was grateful to Xiaoqing. It looked at Xiaoqing confusedly. Xiaoqing said to it seriously, "Go south. There is a place called Jiang City. My friends are all there. It's a good place to settle down. If you don't have a place to go, you can go to Jiang City." The zombie king roared gratefully, then took his monkey-like brothers and left with the other zombies. Zhao Hansheng was still hanging there. He was a little confused. The zombie siege that troubled them was solved just like that? Just a second ago, he was still holding on to the hope that even if he were to die, he would die before the base was breached. But in the next second, all the zombies retreated. It was like a dream. He couldn't even tell whether it was a dream when the zombies surrounded the city, or now that the zombies had dispersed, it was a dream. Xiaoqing retracted the vines and said to Zhao Hansheng and the others, "The crisis is over. You can return to the city. The only problem is that we need to choose a new chief." The remaining group of people expressed that even if the original base chief was still alive, they would not let such a beast in human skin be the base chief again. It was time to select a new base chief. All eyes were on Zhao Hansheng. Zhao Hansheng was still confused. He stared at Xiaoqing's back as she left. His heart was filled with indescribable disappointment and a feeling that he couldn't explain. She was a very magical girl. He had never seen such a woman. She was strong, mysterious, independent. Even her beauty was beautiful and sharp. He probably wouldn't see her again. Zhao Hansheng rubbed his chest. That strange feeling lingered in his heart and refused to go away. Chapter 351. On the other side, Xiaoqing had met up with her friends. Qin Zishi had big dark circles under his eyes. It was obvious that he hadn't slept well. It was only when Xiaoqing came back that he heaved a sigh of relief and looked at Xiaoqing with a very bitter expression. Xiaoqing hurriedly explained the general situation to everyone, causing a few of her companions to be very angry. At the end of the world, when the law no longer played its role, the demons that had been suppressed in the hearts of some people for a long time were released. When the shackles of morality and the shackles of the law were no longer effective, some people would become unscrupulous, disregarding the law and becoming deranged. Since the problem was solved, they had to go back as soon as possible. Otherwise, Gu Ning might arrive with reinforcements on their way back. Therefore, Qin Zishi asked his friends to find a pack of mutant wolves. He rode on a mutant wolf and rushed back. When they arrived at the gate of the capital, Qin Zishi had just released the pack of mutant wolves when he saw his father walking out with reinforcements. If they had come a little later, they might have missed each other. It was too much of a coincidence. His father was struck dumb when he saw them coming back. He asked, "What happened? Is the battle over? Is the base broken? Why did you come back?" Qin Zishi had no choice but to repeat what Xiao Qing had said yesterday. She then said, "We were worried that the reinforcements would leave too quickly and that I would be too slow to return. It would be easy to meet the reinforcements on the way back, and the reinforcements would have made a wasted trip, so we sped up our return." His father didn't know that the siege of the city was over until now. At this moment, he looked at Xiao Qing in a different way. No matter what, Xiao Qing was brave and resourceful, since she dared to investigate alone and succeeded. "Since it's done, you can come back now," his father said calmly. Father Qin said calmly. This was the first task he had given Qin Zishi, and it was beyond his expectations that she would complete it so well. Mr. Qin actually wanted to praise Qin Zishi, but firstly, he was too shy to say it out loud. Secondly, he was not familiar with the business and was a little stuck. Thirdly, he was afraid that Qin Zishi would be proud. Hence, Mr. Qin cleared his throat for a long time and finally said, "Go back and rest." The journey was quite tiring. Qin Zishi responded expressionlessly and led her friends inside. Xiao Qing could tell that Mr. Qin cared a lot about Qin Zishi. Otherwise, he wouldn't have rushed out with his friends the moment he received news that the Gu siblings were back. A general who came from a military family had his collar button crooked when he led his troops out. How impatient was he? This pair of father and son clearly cared about each other and cared a lot about each other, but they refused to say anything. They would rather have a cold war than express their inner thoughts. Xiao Qing felt tired for them. After entering the capital, they relaxed. Although there was only one adventure, the others who waited outside didn't have an easy time either. Everyone was so worried that they couldn't sleep well at all. Once they were back in the capital, they felt safe and relaxed. However, the moment they arrived at the gate of the Qin family's house, they saw Master Qin walking out with several people in a panic. Seeing Xiao Qing, Master Qin couldn't control himself and immediately said, "The baby is missing." Master Qin had been looking after the little bun these days. He usually took the little bun to play. Occasionally, when the little bun ran to the gate to play by himself, there must be people secretly protecting him. Therefore, Master Qin was quite relieved. Chapter 352. But today, Little Bun said he wanted to play with a ball at the door. Grandpa Qin was busy dealing with the strange fog Xiao Qing had given them, so he arranged for a few superpowered people to secretly protect Little Bun. But at lunchtime, Grandpa Qin realized that Little Bun hadn't come back. He went to the door to call him personally, but then he realized that Little Bun was gone. He was shocked. He couldn't get in touch with Little Bun's bodyguards, so he hurriedly ordered the nannies and bodyguards to search everywhere. In the end, he found the bodies of several bodyguards in a corner. The wounds on the bodies were clean. It was obvious that they had been killed with one stab. He couldn't tell what kind of superpowered person had done it. Grandpa Qin's hands and feet turned cold and he almost fainted. He really doted on Little Bun like he was his grandson. Now that Little Bun had suddenly disappeared and his bodyguards were dead, even though he was used to seeing countless storms and waves and had been able to hold his own in the political world for a long time, he was now an ordinary old man in a panic. Just as Grandpa Qin organized his men to search for Little Bun, Xiao Qing finally came back. As soon as Xiao Qing heard that the Little Bun was missing, her vision went dark. She had originally thought that the capital was safer, so she had left the Little Bun behind. In the end, the Little Bun had disappeared within a few days. Her heart, which hadn't beat since she came back from the dead, seemed to be trembling at this moment. She grabbed the arm of the person beside her tightly and lowered her voice, trying to make it sound less shaky. "Go and find him. Even if you have to turn the entire capital upside down, you have to find my son." Yin Chiyue was in pain from Xiao Qing's grip, but she still comforted Xiao Qing softly. "It'll be fine. Jingdu is only so big, so it's easy to find him. Those people must have caught Little Bun to target you, so they won't easily hurt him. Plus, Little Bun is not completely defenseless. Don't worry." Xiao Qing couldn't hear a word of comfort. Her mind was filled with searching. Grandpa Qin and Father Qin hurriedly gave the order and mobilized all their men. As she looked around, a person suddenly flashed across Xiao Qing's mind. Lin Qifan. For the past few days, Lin Qifan must have come to look for Little Bun frequently. Before he disappeared, Little Bun said that he wanted to play ball with someone at the door. It was very likely that this person was Lin Qifan, the person who kidnapped Little Bun. Xiao Qing told her friends about this conjecture, and they split into several groups. Each group brought along a person who was familiar with Jingdu, and then they split up to look for the women related to Lin Qifan. If she found Lin Qifan, she might be able to find the Little Bun. Xiao Qing, Yin Qiyue, and Erdai were in a group. They brought along a person who was familiar with Jingdu and went to find Lu Xian. When they came to Jingdu this time, they saw Lu Xian and Lin Qifan together. She was jealous of Lin Qifan and almost killed a pair of siblings. She should know where Lin Qifan is, right? At this moment, Lu Xian was having fun with her group of bad friends. Xiao Qing kicked open the door, giving her a fright. When she saw that it was Xiao Qing, she was shocked again. But this time, Qin Zishi wasn't there, so she breathed a sigh of relief. Without seeing Qin Zishi, Lu Xian became much bolder. In addition, she had many friends to support her. She immediately slammed the table and said, "What do you want? This is my house. You're trespassing. Even if I beat you to death here, it's self-defense. Do you understand?" How could Xiao Qing have the time to listen to her blabbering? She immediately pulled out her military knife and nailed it to the table. "I'll ask you 2 questions. Answer me truthfully, or I'll gouge your eyes out." Chapter 353. Xiao Qing's voice was flat, as if it wasn't threatening at all. However, Lu Xian shuddered. But then, she felt that being threatened by Xiao Qing in front of all her friends was very embarrassing. She straightened her neck and said, "I'll say whatever you want me to say. Who do you think you are?" In fact, her words were already showing her weakness. However, Xiao Qing wasn't in the mood to talk to her. She held the military knife and directly stabbed it into the back of Lu Xian's hand, nailing her hand to the table. Lu Xian screamed in pain. Her friends wanted to help, but Xiao Qing whipped them into rolling gourds on the floor. "I'm not in the mood to talk nonsense with you. I'll give you 2 choices. First, tell me where Lin Qifan lives and where he is now. Second, let me kill you." Lu Xian was in so much pain that she kept sucking in cold air. However, she knew that Xiao Qing wasn't lying. If she really refused again, Xiao Qing would really dare to dig her eyes out and step on them like a light bulb. Lu Xian hurriedly said, "Lin Qifan lives in the west of the city. He has a small villa. The address is..." After she told her the address, Xiao Qing calmly pulled out the military knife. She didn't even wipe the blood off and hurriedly led her people to the place she told her. Lu Xian still liked Lin Qifan. As soon as Xiao Qing left, she tried to call Lin Qifan, but it didn't go through. On the other side, Xiao Qing had already arrived at Lin Qifan's place. She violently broke the door. The 3 of them searched the entire villa, but they didn't see Lin Qifan. Her face couldn't help but become gloomy, and she became more and more anxious. Yin Qiyue hurriedly comforted her. "Let's go back to the Qin family first. What if there's news? What if they've already found him?" Although she knew that the chances were slim, Xiao Qing still nodded and walked back. Erdai didn't know how to speak, so she pulled on Yin Qiyue's sleeve and asked her to comfort Xiao Qing. Yin Qiyue said, "Ah Qing, you have to think positively. No matter what the person who took the baby away was thinking, he wouldn't hurt the baby. He definitely wanted to use the baby to exchange for something from us. Plus, the baby has a superpower. He's young, so he won't be guarded. With Yaya's protection, nothing bad will happen to him." "Yaya." Xiao Qing's eyes brightened. She hurriedly sped up. "Let's go." The 2 people were confused, but they still hurriedly followed Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing's heart was filled with joy. How could she forget Ya? Yaya's intelligence wasn't inferior to the average person's. Since she hadn't found Yaya at the scene of the little bun's disappearance, it meant that Yaya was most likely with the little bun. When they returned, there was still no news of the little bun. Xiao Qing walked around the last spot where the little bun was last seen before he disappeared. Her efforts paid off. She finally found something. It was a tuft of rabbit fur. This tuft of rabbit fur was in the place where the little bun often played with a ball. Those who didn't know better would think that Yaya had dropped it when she was picking up a ball. The rabbit fur was facing west. Xiaoqing immediately said, "This is most likely left by Yaya. Let's go." They walked all the way to the west. After walking for a long time, they indeed saw another tuft of rabbit fur in a corner. The rabbit fur was facing west. This time, they could confirm that Yaya had deliberately left it behind. Xiaoqing followed the markings left by Yaya. The little bun was in a daze. He was locked up in a small dark room with only Yaya in his arms to keep him company. After his captors left, the little bun secretly got up from the ground. He stood on his tiptoes and tried to look out the window. However, the window was too high and he couldn't reach it. Chapter 354. Little Bun was a little discouraged. He lowered his head and played with Yaya in his arms, saying in a low voice, "When will Mama come back? Mama will be very worried when she finds out that I'm gone." "Yaya, shrink back. When will Mama come and save us?" After nagging for a while, the little bun sighed and began to play with Yaya. Yaya's face was swollen, and it could not help but roll its eyes. It had left evidence for Xiaoqing, so it had to bear the pain of plucking its fur. If Xiaoqing did not find the evidence it left behind, things would be bad. If Xiaoqing found it, she would definitely be able to find them. Yaya gritted its teeth and thought that it had contributed a lot of hair this time. When it plucked the hair, it was very distressed. When Xiaoqing found them, it must ask Xiaoqing for a lot of carrots to make up for the hair it had plucked. After Little Bun was captured, he was locked in a small dark room. There seemed to be people who had captured him. Little Bun was very smart. He did not want to sit there and wait for death, so he began to look around. The small dark room was empty. There was nothing, not even a light. There was only a door and a window. He jumped and looked outside through the window. He saw a lot of metal and other things piled up outside. Some of them were rusty. Little Bun jumped and jumped, taking in everything outside. It seemed to be a very old factory, and there were many rusty steel bars and other things piled up on the ground. The window was very small, so he could not see anything else. Outside, a few people were sitting in a circle. Lin Qifan was like a lackey, pouring water for everyone. He had always wanted to use Little Bun to change Xiaoqing. He had always believed that Xiaoqing still had some feelings for him. After all, a day together as husband and wife meant 100 days of love. 100 days together as husband and wife meant 100 days of love. As long as Xiaoqing was willing to forgive him, everything would be fine. His life would be better in the future. Then, a group of people came to Xiaoqing. They were very strong, and any one of them was stronger than the strongest paranormals Lin Qifan had ever met. They went straight to the point and asked Lin Qifan to cooperate with them to capture Little Bun and use him to threaten Xiaoqing. After the job was done, he would give him enough crystals and food to live for the rest of his life and let him go far away. Lin Qifan was moved. The reason why he wanted to win Xiaoqing's forgiveness was so that he could live a good life in the future. And the things that these people had promised him were too tempting. With these food and crystals, he could find a small base and live the rest of his life like a tyrant. Therefore, after Lin Qifan confirmed that they indeed had the financial resources, he decisively agreed. After he agreed, those people told him their plan. They wanted to use the Little Bun to lure Xiaoqing over and kill her. Lin Qifan only hesitated for a moment, then decisively cooperated with them to capture Little Bun. After all, it was not the first time that he had betrayed Xiaoqing. Therefore, Lin Qifan immediately took those people to the Qin family's gate and captured Little Bun. While they were capturing Little Bun, those people attacked Little Bun's bodyguards. Seeing how strong they were, Lin Qifan felt a lot more at ease. As long as Xiaoqing was dead, no one would take revenge on him, and he could live a good life in peace. "When should we send the message?" a burly man asked in a low, muffled voice. Another skinny man immediately said, "I thought it would take Xiaoqing a long time to get the message that her son is missing. I didn't expect her to come back so early. But it's not a big deal. Let's wait for a while. When the sky is slightly dark, we can make our move." Skinny Man is right. When the time comes, we will stuff the letter under the Qin family's gate. Xiaoqing will definitely come over when she hears the news. She dotes on her son so much. When the time comes, we will take the opportunity to kill her. After completing the mission, we will quickly retreat. The man sitting in the middle said gloomily. Lin Shifan could not help but swallow his saliva when he heard that. It was not because he felt guilty, but because he was fantasizing about how happy he could live after obtaining those things. Chapter 355. Let's do that. The man rubbed his hands and said, "Leave the delivery to me. Where are you going?" A faint voice suddenly sounded in the room. The man said impatiently, "Didn't I just tell you? Go to the Qin family." Qin. Halfway through his words, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. If he remembered correctly, there was no woman in their group. So, where did this woman's voice come from? The door suddenly rumbled and shattered into a pile of wood dregs, which then scattered all over the ground. Xiao Qing clapped her hands and calmly walked in. She glanced around and asked coldly, "Where's my son?" The room was silent. No one knew how Xiao Qing came here. What did they do to make Xiao Qing come here? Kill her. The leader gritted his teeth and said. The people around him immediately rushed forward. Two people walked out from Xiao Qing's side, one on the left and one on the right. One was Erdai, and the other was Yin Qiue. Yin Qiue stood in front and raised her hand. She clenched her fist and squeezed the air around one of the people. Blood and flesh splattered all over the floor. It was a horrible scene. On the other side, Erdai had rushed into the crowd. His fingernails were as sharp as blades. Anyone who touched his fingernails would have a large piece of flesh torn off. Some people had already noticed that he was different from the others. They immediately screamed, "Zombie!" Xiao Qing took a step forward. The vines followed her movements and drilled out of the ground. This group of people was too weak to withstand a single blow. Lin Qifan felt that something was wrong. He swallowed his saliva in horror and stepped back silently. When Xiao Qing and the others didn't notice him, he had already retreated to the warehouse in the backyard. More than a dozen paranormals couldn't last more than 5 minutes in the hands of Xiao Qing and the other two people. Ignoring the blood on the floor, Xiao Qing said anxiously, "Let's find the baby first." At that moment, Little Bun was trying to save himself. Before he could figure out if he could crawl out of the window, Little Bun heard the sound of the door being unlocked. Immediately after, Lin Qifan pushed open the door and walked in. The Little Bun was full of vigilance, but he still looked confused. He whispered, "Are you here to play with me? But I'm in a bad mood right now, so I don't want to play." Lin Qifan still had the smell of blood on him. He looked at the Little Bun with a dark expression and walked forward without saying a word. The Little Bun was very nervous, but he didn't show it on his face. He leaned into the corner, and before he could say anything, he heard Xiao Qing's voice. "Son, where are you?" The Little Bun's eyes immediately lit up. His mother had come to save him. "Mama, I'm here." As soon as Little Bun finished speaking, Lin Qifan rushed over, as if trying to make Little Bun a hostage. Yaya had been squatting on the side, motionless. When she saw Lin Qifan rushing over, Yaya immediately jumped up and slapped Lin Qifan's face with her rabbit paw. Lin Qifan was an ordinary person, so how could he withstand a high-level mutated animal's foot? He was slapped to the wall by Yaya's paw. Xiao Qing heard the noise and quickly ran over. She was surprised and happy to see Little Bun squatting in the room. She quickly went up and hugged Little Bun. Her voice was choked with sobs. "You scared me to death. You scared me to death, Mama. Don't be scared. Don't be scared." Little Bun gently patted Xiao Qing's back and whispered, "The baby is fine. Look." Xiao Qing hugged Little Bun tightly. She felt tears in her eyes, but there wasn't even a drop of tear. She only breathed heavily and couldn't help but choke with sobs. Her heart was on the verge of breaking down. Chapter 356. She had never been so scared before. Even though she had almost died a few times, she had never been so scared. The Little Bun was more important than her life. Anyone who wanted to take her baby away was the same as taking her life. Xiao Qing hugged the Little Bun tightly, unwilling to let go for even a second. Seeing this, Lin Qifan tried to leave. He crawled out from the corner, but before he could take 2 steps, he was kicked back by Yaya. The noise woke Xiao Qing up. When Xiao Qing turned to look at Lin Qifan, her eyes were red with anger. At that moment, she really wanted to tear him into pieces. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to quench the hatred in her heart. Lin Qifan felt a strong murderous aura from Xiaoqing. He shrank back in fear, as though he was walking on the edge of death. His heart was about to explode from the stimulation. Lin Qifan was very scared. He didn't want to die. He hadn't lived long enough. He wanted to continue living. Xiaoqing hated him to the core. Step by step, she walked towards him. Lin Qifan tried to escape, but Xiaoqing stepped on his leg. Xiaoqing used a lot of strength in her kick, and Lin Qifan's leg bones were instantly shattered. He screamed in pain, and beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. Don't kill me. Lin Qifan hugged his leg and rolled on the ground in pain. He finally calmed himself down. Then, he crawled 2 steps and hugged Xiaoqing's leg. Ah Qing, even if you don't look at anything else, for the sake of our past relationship, please let me go. I swear. As long as you let me go, I will immediately leave the capital and the entire north. I will never appear in front of you again. Xiaoqing lowered her head and glanced at him. She couldn't help but say, disgusting. She had never seen such a disgusting man. Back then, she must have been blind to fall in love with such a man. Lin Qifan didn't care about what Xiaoqing said. He hugged Xiaoqing's leg tightly and said with tears and snot, "You know how much I love you. For the sake of our relationship, please let me go. I was forced by them. They threatened me. They wanted to kill me. I had no choice but to do this." Xiaoqing couldn't take it anymore. She kicked him away. Yin Qiyue and Dai walked over. They glanced at Lin Qifan. Yin Qiyue said coldly, "Ah Qing, kill him. I feel disgusted just by looking at him. Did he have a heart or not? How could he do such a thing again and again, and then beg for her forgiveness with such a disgusting face after the fact?" In any case, they had learned something new. Don't kill me. Don't kill me. Lin Qifan wanted to hug Xiaoqing's leg and cry. Unfortunately, Xiaoqing despised him for being dirty and refused to let him near her. Xiaoqing looked at the crying Lin Qifan and suddenly smiled. "Tell me, what did you do wrong? If you tell me clearly, I might spare your life." Lin Qifan was pleasantly surprised. He hurriedly said, "I really know that I was wrong. I shouldn't have done such a thing because of their threats. I almost harmed you and your son. It's only right that you hate me. I'm willing to compensate you, apologize to you, take care of you, and be a slave." "You know that's not what I want to hear," Xiaoqing said calmly. Lin Qifan gritted his teeth and suddenly slapped himself. "I'm worse than a beast. I was possessed. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault. It's my fault." As he spoke, he slapped himself. He used quite a lot of strength. Soon, his face was swollen. Xiaoqing kicked him and said softly, "All right, I forgive you. Don't worry. I won't kill you." Chapter 357. Without waiting for Lin Qifan to breathe a sigh of relief, Xiaoqing stepped on Lin Qifan's other leg. There weren't any wounds on this leg, so Xiaoqing crushed his leg bones. Not only his leg bones, but his arms were also crushed bit by her. Finally, she crushed the bones below his neck. In the end, almost all of Lin Qifan's bones were crushed by Xiaoqing. Those that couldn't be crushed were crushed by her. In the beginning, Lin Qifan would still beg for mercy. When the pain reached its peak, he would even curse. But in the end, he was exhausted and didn't speak anymore. He was just like a dying dog, lying on the ground, panting heavily and moaning softly. If it weren't for the moaning and the occasional twitching of his body, Xiaoqing would really think that he was dead. Because all the bones in his body were crushed, Lin Qifan was like a pile of mud, lying on the ground. Xiaoqing pulled out her military knife and cut his face again and again. Every cut was so deep that the bones could be seen and the flesh was torn apart. That hatred, that sadness, that anger, all of it dissipated like smoke under the blade. When she finally cut off Lin Qifan's tongue, Xiaoqing suddenly felt that the depression in her heart had completely disappeared. After Xiaoqing finished everything, she then thought of a very serious problem. The scene was too bloody and Little Bun would be scared. She hurriedly carried Little Bun and walked out, bringing Yin Qiyue and Dai with her. Only a pile of flesh was left on the ground. Lin Chifan's bones were all crushed and his face was unrecognizable. Even his tongue was cut off. He could only lie there and wait for death. Xiaoqing slightly curved the corners of her lips. She promised that she wouldn't kill him. But in this world, there were too many things that were scarier than death. For example, living a life worse than death. However, Lin Chifan did not die. He had a superpower, which was an extraordinary recovery ability. It was an extremely selfish superpower. Although it was weak, it allowed him to survive. But he was better off dead than alive. From then on, there was no Lin Chifan in the world. He was just a beggar, dragging his rotten body and begging for food on the streets of the capital. He didn't have a tongue. Other than his hands, his body was almost like a pile of meat paste. When he begged for food, he used his hands to crawl forward. Sometimes, he would think about the first time he met Xiaoqing a long time ago. Her cold eyes suddenly opened with a hint of danger, like a blooming, poisonous flower that captured his heart. He stood in the light while she sat in the shadows. As the light and darkness intertwined, for the first time, he went against his conscience and came into contact with trouble. As for betrayal, Lin Chifan thought it was probably because he was too greedy. At first, he was a little unwilling. Why was she better than him in everything? Even a man like him needed her to support him. Later, he wanted her to have a better life. He didn't want to be weaker than her, so he wanted to earn more. In the end, his greed led him step by step towards destruction. Perhaps this was his nature. Even if he fell in love with someone, the person he loved the most was still himself. Other than himself, he could sacrifice everything else. It wasn't easy for Xiaoqing to find her son. After that, she became a little abnormal. She started to like hugging the little bun all the time, whether it was when she was sleeping, eating, or walking. Every single moment. If she left little bun for more than a minute, she would panic. On the way back, she hugged little bun so tightly that little bun almost couldn't breathe. Chapter 358. Yin Qiue contacted Mr. Qin and dragged the bodies of the superpowered people back to try to identify them. She wanted to find out who was targeting Xiaoqing, who had a grudge against Xiaoqing. What was so deep that the other party didn't hesitate to set up a trap to kill Xiaoqing? Xiaoqing was very confused. Who had she offended? In the end, after much consideration, there was only one person left, Wu Buping. Previously, she had interfered in the matter between Wu Buping and Zhu Machin, causing Wu Buping's plan to target Zhu Machin to fail. Wu Buping must have hated her. However, such a small matter shouldn't make Wu Buping want to kill her so urgently, right? Xiaoqing scratched her head and sat on the sofa with little bun in her arms, waiting for the results. Finally, Mr. Qin came in and frowned. I can't find them. I asked my subordinates to compare all the superpowered people recorded in the entire capital, but they couldn't find any of them. It seems that the person who did this is very cautious. Mr. Qin said with a headache, I still need some time to investigate carefully. Check the superpowered people who have been in and out of the capital recently. Maybe I can find a few of them. Xiaoqing didn't think that Mr. Qin would be able to find them immediately. After all, if he wasn't a fool, he wouldn't hire a group of people who were easily exposed to be assassins. Besides, she already had a suspect. Other than Wu Buping, there shouldn't be a second person who had the ability to set up such a trap. Wu Buping was really ruthless. He wanted to kill her for such a small matter. He even sent so many superpowered people who were unclear about the background to set up such a meticulous trap. If Ye hadn't been quick-witted and left a mark, she really might have gone to this Hongmin banquet alone after receiving the letter. However, Wu Buping was destined not to be able to kill her. Because even if she went to the Hongmin banquet alone, with so few people, they couldn't kill her. Wu Buping underestimated her too much. Unless Wu Buping used the entire Mad Demon group to set up a trap, Xiaoqing wasn't afraid at all. Could Wu Buping send more than 2 level 5 superpowered people to kill her? Without more than 2 level 5 superpowered people, no one could stop her. Sorry to trouble you, Xiaoqing said sincerely. Father Qin said with a cold face, the child was kidnapped from my house. I have to bear a lot of responsibility, so you don't have to thank me. Xiaoqing's mouth twitched. She wasn't prepared to thank him. Father Qin continued, I heard from the old man that he's almost done researching the strange fog you gave him last time. When he comes back, we can talk about it in detail. Old Master Qin was probably as anxious as Xiao Qing. He immediately led a group of people to look for the little bun. Although Papa Qin had already sent a message to inform him that the little bun had been found, he didn't rush back so quickly. Old Master Qin returned faster than Father Qin had expected. The moment he reached the door, he couldn't help but shout, Where's the baby? Where's the baby? Didn't you say you found it? Grandpa, I'm here. The little bun was snuggling in Xiao Qing's arms. When he heard the sound, he quickly stuck his head out. Old Master Qin ran in like a gust of wind. His heart ached for the little bun, and he wanted to hug him. But when he remembered that he had just lost the little bun under his nose, he was too embarrassed to hug him. The little bun hurriedly went over. He cupped Old Master Qin's chin and kissed him. Then he said, Grandpa, are you worried about the baby? Look at the baby. He's fine. Sigh. The baby is so obedient. Old Master Qin's heart ached terribly. He gave the little bun a loving kiss before they sat down to talk. After talking about the kidnapping, Old Master Qin said, The results of the inspection of the fog are indeed out. It's already a type of chemical weapon. I'm going to send people to keep an eye on Wu Booping and the Mad Demon Mercenary Group. I think they must be doing similar experiments in secret. Father Qin nodded. Otherwise, it's impossible for them to develop this fog and directly make it into a weapon. This can only be made after many experiments. Xiao Qing's thoughts were almost all on the little bun. She only said, I'll leave everything to the two of you. I think the Mad Demon Mercenary Group is very dangerous. It's best to send more people to keep an eye on them, just in case. Old Master Qin nodded and said, We'll settle this matter tomorrow. The most important thing now is to investigate. The entire capital should know about the people targeting you and the baby. You're living in the Qin family, so there aren't many people who would dare to make a move. Xiao Qing thought for a moment and said, I want to take the child and leave the capital first. Before she could finish speaking, Old Master Qin's eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. He was expressionless, but his voice sounded a little aggrieved. Is it because of this kidnapping incident? He was indeed in the wrong this time. He shouldn't have left the little bun alone outside. Otherwise, such a thing wouldn't have happened. Old Master Qin's confidence was very low, and his mood worsened. He had promised Xiao Qing that he would take good care of the little bun, but in the end, the little bun was kidnapped. More importantly, Xiao Qing was the one who found the little bun and saved the little bun. This made the old man even less confident. But he really didn't want the little bun to leave. He liked the little bun very much, just like how he liked his own grandson. But now that the little bun was leaving, he didn't know when he would be able to see him again. The capital was so far away from S-City. Xiao Qing and the little bun couldn't come over every few days. First of all, there wasn't enough time. This meant that it would be very difficult for him to see the little bun again. Old Master Qin was very dispirited. He felt wronged and pitiful. He huddled in the corner and didn't say a word, because he knew that he had no right to ask the little bun to stay. Seeing Old Master Qin depressed and sitting in the corner, looking very pitiful, Xiao Qing couldn't help but say, There's one more thing that I need to trouble you with. Old Master Qin pulled himself together and asked, What is it? Xiao Qing smiled and said, Can you find me a house in the capital? I want to buy a house. Chapter 359. Old Master Qin immediately perked up. Xiao Qing was going to buy a house in the capital? Did that mean that she was going to settle down in Jing City? As long as Xiao Qing settled down in Jing City, he would be able to see the little bun more often. It was a great thing. Old Master Qin was very happy about Xiao Qing's kindness. He waved his hand and said, You can go back to the S-City survivor base. I promise that I will find a good house for you by the time you come back. Thank you, old master. Xiao Qing smiled. She liked the Qin family from the bottom of her heart. They were really good to them. Before they left, Qin Zishi held a farewell party for Xiao Qing and the others. Then, she reluctantly sent Xiao Qing and the others to the gate. She even wanted to send Xiao Qing and the others back to the S-City survivor base. But in the end, Xiao Qing still rejected him. Giving each other gifts was like taking off one's pants to fart. It was unnecessary. Then, the group went back to the S-City survivor base. When they arrived, it was afternoon. There were not many outsiders in the base. After entering the base, they found that there were not many people in the base. Xiaoqing asked someone and found out that most of the people in the base had been sent to clean up the original S-City. Because of the rapid evolution of zombies, the current S-City survivor base was becoming more and more unsafe. Therefore, the higher-ups of the base set their sights on the original S-City. They were trying to clean up S-City and rebuild the defense system. Then, they would move all the people in the S-City survivor base into the city. In this way, the safety index would be much higher. However, it was not easy to clean up a city, especially a city that had been occupied by zombies for a long time. Zombies ran rampant in the city. There were 3rd-level zombies, 4th-level zombies, and even 5th-level zombies. It was said that a few days ago, the base first cleared the zombies near the electric industry building and took control of the signal tower in S-City. Now, the people in the area had already recovered their communication. The base was currently cleaning up the area around the electric industry building. They had to clear out all the zombies and then move back into S-City. From Xiaoqing's point of view, it was necessary. The current protective measures in the S-City survivor base were simply too crude. Once they encountered a large zombie horde, the entire base would be trampled to pieces by the zombie horde. After moving back to S-City, at least their safety was guaranteed. They didn't have to worry about zombies attacking the city in the middle of the night when they were asleep. After receiving the news, Xiaoqing left with her friends. No matter what, she was about to leave the S-City survivor base and move into the capital survivor base. She had nothing to do with what happened here. When they returned, Fu Jingma was cooking. Upon hearing that Xiaoqing and the rest were back, Fu Jingma stopped cooking and ran out with his apron. Fu Jingma was pleasantly surprised. "You guys are back?" Xiaoqing nodded and said, "I'm going to pack up and move to the Kyoto survivor base." Her expression was very calm, but Fu Jingma was shocked. However, he still said seriously, "I'll go wherever you go." "It's okay." Xiaoqing didn't say anything. She just asked Yin Hanqing to come over and cook. After dinner, the group went back to their own homes to sleep. The next morning, Xiaoqing took her friends and prepared to leave. Before leaving, she had to go to the base and cancel the registration. Then, she would go to the capital and register again. Chapter 360. In the lobby, after Xiaoqing explained her purpose, the girl in charge of registration was in a dilemma. It was as troublesome as changing one's nationality. She flipped through Xiaoqing's information and said, "Theoretically, you can cancel your household registration, but what?" Gu Panpan, who was short-tempered, asked. "In order to prevent people who change their permanent residence every few days and bring unnecessary trouble to the staff, the base has a rule that if you want to cancel your household registration, you must have enough contribution points." "But you don't have enough," the pretty girl said embarrassedly. "If you don't have enough contribution points, you can't cancel your household registration." Xiaoqing frowned. She never knew there was such a rule. It was really troublesome. Then Xiaoqing asked, "How many contribution points do we need?" "Not much. If you all want to cancel your household registration, you need more than 100 contribution points," the girl said seriously. Xiaoqing thought for a while and asked, "Is there a way to earn contribution points quickly?" "Yes, you can complete important tasks, such as clearing the zombies in S-City this time. As long as you clear a certain number of zombies, you can get enough contribution points," the girl said gently. The girl said very gently. Xiaoqing immediately made the decision. "Accept this mission for us." It was a piece of cake for her to clear a certain number of zombies. She just needed to take her air dye and find a remote place to shout. Then there would be endless zombies coming to kill her. However, when they were leaving, Gu Panpan was still angry. "Have you heard that other bases need contribution points to cancel their household registration? They are obviously bullying us. Seeing that we are leaving, they deliberately asked us to do something for the base." Xiaoqing rubbed her head and said, "Clear a certain number of zombies. This task is quite fast. Don't worry." They went back to pack up and prepared to enter the abandoned S-City. The entire S-City had been occupied by zombies for a long time. It was difficult to drive all the zombies out. As long as there was one zombie left, they would be doomed when they moved back to S-City. After all, there were many ordinary people in the S-City survivor base. If one or two zombies jumped out from the corner and bit one of the survivors, then the entire base would be doomed. Therefore, it was particularly troublesome to search. They had to ensure that the entire city was completely under the control of the humans before they could declare it a success. Therefore, the people who came to hunt zombies were divided into 3 groups. Some people were responsible for the first round of rough hunting, eliminating most of the zombies that were walking on the surface. The second group was responsible for patrolling around, searching every nook and cranny of the place that could still be found. The third type of people was the most important. They carefully inspected wave after wave, looking for fish that had slipped through the net. After 3 waves of people, it was still not over. The base would send people over to look for any stray zombies, kill all the zombies they could see, and bring them back safely to the base. When Xiaoqing and the others accepted the task, the base had already been strangled for a period of time. The power plant was the main target, and a large area around it had been cleaned up. Therefore, Xiaoqing and the others found a place and began to clean up the zombies. Low-level zombies were a piece of cake for Xiaoqing and the others. They even played Do Diju while killing zombies. Because 2 people were enough to kill zombies, the others were playing cards. Whoever lost the most would be responsible for cleaning up the zombies for a period of time. Chapter 361. Even so, it only took them 3 days to clear all the zombies nearby. Later on, as long as there were zombies, they would run away when they saw them. After all, they were scared of being killed. Xiaoqing was usually the one who cleaned up the zombies, because she didn't like to play cards. Moreover, she was the most lethal one among all of them. It could be said that Xiaoqing was like a meat grinder, constantly killing zombies. Within a few days, they had collected enough zombie nuclei for contribution points. After collecting enough nuclei, Xiaoqing took them back. She went to the hall and reported the number of zombies they had killed in the past 2 days. Then she took out the nuclei as evidence and quietly waited for them to report the result. The face of the girl in charge of registration changed. She looked at the nuclei and couldn't help but ask, "Did you kill all these?" Xiaoqing nodded and said, "We should have gathered enough contribution points, right?" Unexpectedly, the girl hesitated for a while and then said, "Not enough." Xiaoqing frowned and asked, "Didn't you calculate at that time? How could it not be enough? We killed according to the number you gave us, and there were even some extra." The girl said, "At that time, it was enough, but I miscalculated. It's not that all of you need 100 contribution points. It's that each of you needs 100 contribution points. That's why it's only enough for one person's contribution points." Xiaoqing's face immediately sank. She didn't expect that the base would do such a thing. This was clearly the base's intention. That was, they wouldn't let them go even if they acted shamelessly. Before, everyone only needed 100 contribution points, but now it suddenly became 100 contribution points for each person. Wasn't this playing with them? This was simply bullying them on purpose. Before Xiaoqing could get angry, the girl said, "In this way, you can't prove that these nuclei were all hunted by you this time. So I can't. What the fuck is this?" Gu Panpan had a bad temper. She immediately jumped out and pointed at the girl's nose. Previously, everyone needed 100 contribution points. Now, everyone needs 100 contribution points. Do you have to be so greedy? Gu Panpan slammed the counter and said, "If you don't give me an explanation today, I won't let you off." The girl wanted to cry but had no tears. She said softly, "I really didn't decide this. It was decided by the higher-ups. You're not done with me. I can't do anything about it. I'm just following the rules." "Is this how the rules work?" Gu Panpan sneered, then said, "You still want us to prove that we killed these zombies? This is the same as asking me to prove whether or not I'm a woman. If this isn't nonsense, then what is?" The girl stuttered for a long time before she said, "It's not that I want to make things difficult for you. It's the request of the higher-ups, including checking if the zombies were killed in S-City." Seeing this, Gu Panpan sneered, "To put it bluntly, you just don't want to let us go, right? Why are you still looking for excuses?" The girl stopped talking. Even if she asked again, she would only say, "It's the rule of the higher-ups." Gu Panpan was so angry that she stomped her feet. The key was, how could they prove that they killed those zombies in S-City? Should they cut off the zombie's head every time they killed a zombie and bring it back for her to see? Xiao Qing patted Gu Panpan's shoulder and shook his head at her. The whole base of S-City was under the command of the base chief. Of course, whatever he said would be the law. They didn't even have room to refute. This time, it was obvious that it was too troublesome to clean up S-City, so the base chief needed a lot of fighters. Xiao Qing and the others' fighting ability was also very high in the base, which could be seen from their completion records. It should be a normal rule that they needed contribution points to cancel their household registration, but everyone still needed contribution points. It was probably a temporary decision made by the higher-ups after reading the information of Xiao Qing and the others. After all, it was not easy to find such good fighters. It would be a pity if they let them go. It was better to make use of the waste and let them kill more zombies in S-City. This way, the base would save more trouble. Look, this was such a smart idea. Xiao Qing's eyes were cold. She knocked on the window and asked, 100 contribution points per person, right? There won't be any changes. Yes, the pretty girl hurriedly said. As long as you bring back enough nuclei, you can pass the inspection and get contribution points. You don't need to prove that these zombies are from S-City, Xiao Qing said lightly. The girl coughed and said, I believe you. Bah, what were you doing earlier? After a long while, Xiao Jing couldn't help swearing, it's them again. Damn it. On the other side, Xiao Qing, Xiao Tong, Yin Chiyue, and Little Bun had just finished a wave of killing. A small zombie group led by a level 4 zombie was cleared by them. As soon as they entered S-City, Xiao Qing divided their small team into groups. The Gu siblings and Yin Hanqing were responsible for wandering around and killing zombies. Shi, Xiao Tong, and Yin Chiyue were responsible for clearing the fixed zombie groups, such as large shopping malls and schools, which were densely packed with zombies. As for the rest, Air Dai was simply left alone. S-City was originally Air Dai's hometown. As soon as he came back, he was like a fish in water. He went everywhere to find the high-level zombie leaders. If he could defeat them, he would kill them. If he couldn't, he would call his friends to help him. In short, life was very happy. The speed at which she killed zombies was frightening. Her vines shot out with a whoosh and skewered a zombie into a stick of candied hawthorn. Soon, those zombies jumped out by themselves. Xiao Qing and the others only needed to walk around to kill a lot of zombies. According to this speed, tomorrow may not be enough. Xiao Qing sighed and then said. Yin Chiyue had to comfort her. It doesn't matter if it's 1 or 2 days later. It's normal that it's troublesome to leave the base. After a short rest, Xiao Qing went to kill zombies. After a while, she suddenly heard Air Dai's sharp voice calling them. The group of people didn't say anything, leaving the zombies that they were killing, and ran towards the direction of Air Dai's voice. Chapter 364. Luckily, Air Dai didn't like to be too far away from Xiao Qing, so he had been wandering around nearby. When Xiao Qing and the others heard the noise, they hurried over. Air Dai was unable to hold on any longer. The ones besieging him were 2 zombies, 2 identical zombies. These 2 zombies were wearing shabby school uniforms. One on the left and one on the right, they besieged Air Dai. They looked exactly the same. The only difference was that one had a red left eye, while the other had a red right eye. When they were still alive, they should have been twins. Probably because they were twins, they had a great tacit understanding with each other. Their cooperation was perfect, and they were stronger than Air Dai. At that moment, Air Dai was in danger. Xiao Qing saw that Air Dai was injured from a distance. Her eyes turned red, and she whipped the ground with her 2 vine whips. As a boost, she bounced out like a cannonball. She quickly landed in the battle circle, and the 2 zombies were shocked. These 2 zombies were the overlords of this area. They led a group of subordinates and lived a carefree life. Then Air Dai appeared. What should they do when other powerful zombies invaded their territory? Kick them out. or kill them directly. As a result, Dai, who was killing in the zombie crowd, was targeted by two zombies. The two zombies were hiding in the zombie crowd. When Dai's attention was on the ordinary zombies, the two zombies rushed out from the left and right side of him. Dai didn't have time to react. Two pieces of flesh were scratched off, and one of the zombies almost tore off his arm. Dai hurriedly called for help. Xiaoqing landed on the ground. The vines in her hand seemed to be alive. They drilled out and entangled one of the zombies. She directly pulled the zombie to her side. The other zombie was shocked and quickly jumped away to avoid being caught by Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing reached out her hand. Her 5 fingers were like knives stabbing into tofu. She easily pierced the zombie's head and took out the zombie's nucleus. The zombie was probably irritated by his brother's death. It screamed and was about to run away. Revenge was a dish best served cold, not to mention a zombie. How could Xiaoqing let it go? She immediately threw out a vine and chased after it. Then, the poor zombie was easily dragged back by Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing opened its skull and dug out its crystal nucleus. Dai was badly injured. There was a scratch on his face. He looked very pitiful. When he saw Xiaoqing coming over, he directly jumped on her and hung his whole body on Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing quickly caught Dai. She held Dai's soft but with one hand and said, "It feels good." Then she gently pinched it. Yin Qiue immediately pretended to cough twice to remind Xiaoqing. However, Xiaoqing didn't notice. She held Dai's butt and rubbed Dai's wound. Then she gave the 2 high-level zombie nuclei to Dai for him to absorb. Chapter 365. When Xiaoqing saw Dai curled into a ball and shivered in the corner because of his body, her heart ached terribly. Perhaps Xiaoqing had treated Dai like a child at the very beginning. If she hadn't just become a mother at that time, and if it hadn't been for the fact that Dai was different from ordinary zombies, perhaps she would have killed Dai when they first met. However, after getting along with each other for a long time, their relationship had changed. They had gone through life and death together again and again, and the special situation that happened that time had made their relationship impure. If Dai was an ordinary person who could be responsible for his own decisions, Xiaoqing might have chosen to be with him. However, she couldn't do that now. He had no memory and was just like a child. Everything was taught by Xiaoqing. If Xiaoqing was with him now, what would happen when Dai regained his memory? Would he regret it? Would he think that she was taking advantage of him? It could be said that the relationship between her and Dai was really messy. As for Yin Qiue, sometimes Xiaoqing despised herself. When Yin Qiue confessed to her, she rejected his feelings on one hand, but didn't reject his approach on the other hand. It was like a whore who wanted to maintain her chastity. The men around her were all very nice to her, so she couldn't make a choice and could only pretend that she didn't know. However, this couldn't work. Sooner or later, she would have to make a choice. She would choose one of the men and give up the others, or she would choose none and leave with the child. After thinking for a long time, Xiaoqing looked at Dai in the corner and said softly to Yin Qiue, "It's cold at night. I forgot to bring a quilt when I went out." Yin Qiue stared at Xiaoqing for a while and then chuckled. "I'll go outside and find some clean beds." Yin Qiue definitely knew what she was going to do. Xiaoqing felt bitter in her mouth. She asked Dai to play with the little bun at the door and then walked to Dai. Dai lowered his head silently. There were blue veins on his neck because of his endurance. He didn't know where the unbearable pain came from and how to relieve it. However, he didn't want Xiaoqing to feel embarrassed, so he would rather continue to endure it. Xiaoqing touched his neck and whispered, "Raise your head and look at me." Dai raised his head obediently. There was still some grievance in his eyes, and he looked pitiful. Xiaoqing lowered her head and kissed Dai's eyes gently. Then she said, "Close your eyes. Don't look at me." She felt disgusted when she was looked at by such pure eyes. However, Dai was stubborn and refused to close his eyes. He looked at Xiaoqing in a daze, and the grievance in his eyes became more and more intense. Xiaoqing sighed softly. In the end, she reached out and held the source of evil. She said helplessly, "If only you could remember everything." Then she wouldn't have to feel guilty and bear such a burden. She could make her own decision clearly and decisively. Yin Qiyu seriously went out and found several new quilts. Then she hugged the soft quilt and sat at the door for a long time. Occasionally, there would be one or two low gasps and Dai's suppressed roars from inside. Every time this happened, his fingers would grip the corner of the quilt so tightly that his knuckles would turn white. How could he not be jealous? He was so jealous that he went crazy. How could he not be sad? He was so sad that he wanted to die. How could he not be resentful? He hated her so much that his heart, liver, spleen, and lungs were all in a mess. The woman he cherished, the woman he was willing to treat as his queen, was doing the most intimate thing with another man at this moment. However, he couldn't do anything but swallow the sweetness in his throat. Chapter 366. If someone were to pay attention to Yin Qiyu at this moment, they would discover that his eyes were completely red and his expression was twisted into a hideous expression due to the extreme repression. The jealousy, pain, and torment that welled up in his heart nearly drove Yin Qiyu crazy. He raised his hand and fiercely bit his wrist, tearing open his flesh and letting his blood drip out. This kind of physical pain should have brought him the most joy, but at this moment, it couldn't alleviate even the slightest bit of his pain. Yin Qiyu curled into a ball and continuously bit the skin on his arm. In the end, he knelt on the floor and hugged the blanket. He buried his face in the blanket and tightly covered it until the feeling of suffocation caused his mind to go blank. Only then did he slowly let go of his hand and lay on the floor, losing all his strength. After a long time, there was no sound in the room. Yin Qiyu fiercely rubbed his face and tried his best to make his expression look more normal. Then he pulled his sleeves and covered his scarred arm before walking in with the blanket. There was still an ambiguous atmosphere in the room. Xiaoqing was already dressed neatly and expressionlessly walked into the room with Dai in her arms. Yin Qiyu followed and then took a step before Xiaoqing. He changed the old blanket on the bed, cleaned the dust, and put on the new one. Then Xiaoqing put Dai under the blanket. Dai had already fallen into a deep sleep. Xiaoqing pulled the blanket over him, and for a moment, she didn't know what to say. The atmosphere was extremely awkward. Yin Qiyu lowered her delicate eyes. After a while, she tried to find a topic to talk about. When we reach the capital, I must tell old Master Qin to find a spacious house for me. I want to buy a large bed, the kind that can allow several people to roll around on it. It's comfortable to sleep. Qiyu, do you like freedom? Xiaoqing didn't want to disturb Dai, so she walked to the balcony. She had never smoked in the past since smoking was bad for her health, but now, whenever she was frustrated, she would smoke a cigarette. Yin Qiyu's face immediately paled. He leaned against the balcony door and said in a low voice, "Why are you suddenly asking me this?" Xiaoqing holds the railing and looks at the dilapidated house not far away. Her heart is empty and a little sore. It's too tiring and hard to follow me. You have to run around almost every day. I can't give you anything. It's better for you to live in the Linchuan base. Someone will provide for you. You just need to do the experiments you like and do whatever you want. What are you trying to say? Yin Qiyu's fingertips were trembling. He stared at Xiaoqing, his eyes red with anger and pain. Xiaoqing was shocked. Then, she smiled bitterly. I'm not trying to drive you away. I just think you deserve better. Yin Qiyu grabbed Xiaoqing's hand and said coldly, "You always think that you're strong and that you're always willing to make decisions for others. But have you ever thought about my feelings? I'm cheap. I just like to follow you. Even if you don't like me, I'll stick to you shamelessly. Even if you hate me, I'll secretly watch you." Yin Qiyu's whole body clung to Xiaoqing like a snake clinging to a tree. He kept moving closer to Xiaoqing. Finally, he gently stuck out the tip of his tongue and licked Xiaoqing's neck. Xiaoqing reflexively wanted to break away, but she smelled blood. She lowered her head and grabbed Yin Qiyu's arm. When she pulled it up, his sleeve loosened, revealing his scarred arm. Xiaoqing subconsciously tightened her grip on Yin Qiyu's wrist. She couldn't help but be angry. She kept making all kinds of food and thought of all kinds of ways to nourish his body. In the end, he ruined himself, Chapter 367. The word master sounded like a Japanese manga. It was filthy and full of filth. Promise me this once. Yin Qiue looked at Xiaoqing pitifully. Xiaoqing felt her scalp tingle. She had to say, "I'll do as you say." For some reason, she suddenly imagined Yin Qiue wearing a maid's uniform with nothing inside. When she came home, Yin Qiue came over with a pair of slippers. He changed her shoes and asked her with a flirtatious look, "Welcome home, master. Do you want to eat first, or eat me first?" That's so scary. Can I choose to eat dye first? After much difficulty, Xiaoqing finally finished applying the ointment on a certain one. Xiaoqing glanced at him and saw that his upper body had been torn to shreds by Xiaoqing. His pants were also unrecognizable, and one of his shoes was still hanging outside the window. From the front, it looked normal. From the back, it was full of red whip marks. It was very ambiguous. Xiaoqing had no choice but to carry Yin Qiue and walk into the room. In the end, she stuffed him into the quilt. Yin Qiue only had his head exposed. He lay in the quilt happily and whispered, "It's already so late. Come in and sleep. If you don't eat, Xiaotong still has to eat." Xiaoqing rolled her eyes. She reached into the quilt like a rogue and slapped Yin Qiue's butt. Then she said, "Sleep well. I'll go and cook." After she went out to cook, Yin Qiue turned over with a melancholy face and stared at dye. In fact, as long as Xiaoqing was willing, he was willing to share Xiaoqing with dye. Just like before, the three of them lived a good life together. But needless to say, Xiaoqing was the kind of person who would instantly turn into an old cadre when faced with such a situation. She would never agree to such a ridiculous thing. In fact, if it was possible to monopolize Xiaoqing, who would be willing to share her with other men? Even he was unwilling to do that. He just didn't want to lose Xiaoqing because he knew very well that in Xiaoqing's heart, dye would always be more important than him. If one day, Xiaoqing was willing to accept both of them at the same time, he would be the one taking advantage. Because the first person to meet Xiaoqing and enter Xiaoqing's heart was dye, and he was just a latecomer. On the other side, Xiaoqing finished cooking and fed Xiaotong and Little Bun. She asked Xiaotong to take Little Bun to sleep and then went back to the house. The two men were lying on the bed, sleeping soundly. They consciously left the middle space, just enough for one person to lie down. It felt as if the first wife and the second wife were waiting for her to go home and sleep. Xiaoqing struggled for a minute, then got into the bed and prepared to sleep. The two men who were sleeping soundly immediately came up to her, one on her left and one on her right. Xiaoqing's mouth twitched, but she couldn't be bothered and fell asleep. The next day, dye was the first to wake up. He turned sideways and peeked at Xiaoqing. His eyes were filled with joy, satisfaction, and a little shyness. Xiaoqing cared about him after all. She didn't want him to suffer, and she didn't want him to suffer. Thinking of this, he was satisfied. The next to wake up was Yin Qiue, but Xiaoqing was the last to wake up. She had done 2 physical activities in a row last night, and she had thought so much. She was dead tired. As soon as Xiaoqing woke up, the two men gave her a good morning kiss from each side and salivated all over her face. Then, she kicked each of them off the bed. Then Xiaoqing got up and went to cook. Yesterday's incident was too sudden, so they didn't have enough work to do. Today, they had to continue to work and get more crystal cores to make up for the contribution points. So after breakfast, the group started to get busy. Dye and Yin Qiue, who were satisfied, were very active today, especially dye. He was like the wind, rushing here and there. Every time he came back, he would hold a pile of crystal cores and give them to Xiaoqing as if they were treasures. His behavior was just like a boyfriend in love, giving gifts to his girlfriend. And he was much crazier than those boyfriends. Every time he came back, he was hurt all over, but he didn't get tired. In the end, he was slapped to the ground by Xiaoqing and calmed down. Okay, now that we're full, it's time to work. The whole S-City was not small. Even if all the paranormals in the capital were called to clean it up, it would take more than a month to finish the preliminary cleaning. After the preliminary cleaning, there would be a second cleaning, and even a third cleaning. They had to check round by round until they were sure that there was not a single zombie in the whole city. Only then could the survivors in the base move in. So the S-City survivor base almost mobilized all the paranormals in the base to clean up S-City. The expected goal was to move into S-City within half a year. Xiao Qing led her friends. No matter where they went, they would meet the cleaning teams of the S-City survivor base. Generally speaking, she would avoid them. If they met a large number of zombies, she would take her friends and cut them up. Therefore, their fame soon spread to all the paranormal squads in S-City. Almost everyone knew that there was such a squad, known as the Zombie Meat Grinder, crazily cleaning up zombies everywhere. The north of the city has been cleaned up by them. Let's go to the south. Xiao Qing pointed at the crystal cores and said helplessly, Okay, let's inform them. We'll go there first. Yin Hanqing nodded seriously, then gave the signal to Yin Qiue and the others. After a simple communication, Xiao Qing led Air Dai and the others to the south of the city. Chapter 368. Those zombies were provoked, so they rushed over from all directions, trying to surround the small group of paranormals in the middle, which seemed to have no sense of existence in the zombie crowd. Xiao Qing saw the group of zombies from a distance. She calculated and found that as long as they cleaned up this wave of zombies, they would have enough contribution points. Without another word, Xiao Qing released a signal flare and prepared to call the rest of her friends over. After all, the more the merrier. However, seeing that the small group of paranormals was about to be drowned in the sea of zombies, Xiao Qing couldn't just stand aside and wait for Yin Hanqing and the others to come over. Therefore, Xiao Qing was the first to take action. She found a balcony on the second floor, then climbed up. After occupying the high ground, she waved her hands, and the vines rushed out quickly with her mind. The vines wrapped around the waists of the paranormals who were drowned in the sea of zombies, then dragged them back. Those paranormals were full of despair and were ready to die, but they closed their eyes and didn't feel the pain of being torn apart. Instead, they felt as if they were riding on clouds. When they opened their eyes again, they saw a woman carrying a child in front of them. The woman was expressionless. She took back the vines, then jumped off the balcony before they could react. Only then did they come to their senses. Were they saved? After saving the small group of paranormals, Xiao Qing joined her friends. Air Dai jumped into the zombie crowd without hesitation and kept killing the high-level zombies. Xiao Qing didn't rush in. She needed to protect Little Bun and Xiao Tong. Xiao Tong released a spiritual shield and followed behind Xiao Qing. The shield covered Xiao Qing and Yin Qiue, so no zombie could break through it. Then two people, one in front of the vines and the other one controlling the air, harvesting the zombies at a fast speed. Soon, Yin Hanqing and the others, who had received the news, arrived. They came from another direction and surrounded the zombies, then began to clean them up. Their combination was like this. Gu Chuan was in charge of freezing the zombies. He didn't want to freeze them to death. He only wanted to make them unable to move for a short period of time. Then, Gu Panpan was like a King Kong Barbie. All the ice sculptures would quickly break under her hands. Then Gu Chuan used ice in his left hand and water in his right hand. As long as the water dragon was released, Yin Hanqing's lightning would immediately follow. After all, water could conduct electricity. Therefore, groups of zombies fell instantly. The scene was even more spectacular than Xiao Qing's. The group of super-powered people standing on the balcony purely as onlookers was speechless. They were chased by zombies and had nowhere to run. In the end, they could only wait for death. However, when these zombies encountered Xiao Qing and the others, they were unable to resist. There were at least 1,000 zombies, and the weakest one was at least 800. They were surrounded by a team of super-powered people and tortured like dead dogs. No wonder they could only be the lowest-level super-powered people's team. Half an hour later, Gu Panpan and her friends began to clean up the battlefield. Cleaning up the battlefield was the most annoying job, because the zombies all over the ground were smelly. She had to cut open their heads and take out their nuclei. In the end, Gu Panpan didn't even look at the lowest-level zombies. She would only take out the nuclei of those at least second-level zombies. After taking out the nuclei, Xiao Qing roughly pointed at them and left with her friends. At this time, The rescued team of superpowered people realized that they hadn't thanked Xiaoqing yet. At this moment, Xiaoqing had already taken her friends back. They had almost collected enough contribution points. On the way back, they should be able to clean up some zombies. Chapter 369. This time, if the base still found an excuse, she would leave directly. At most, she would go to the capital to be a temporary resident. Anyway, the capital wouldn't chase them away. It was just a household registration. It wouldn't be a problem. At most, every time she left the capital and returned, the procedures would be slightly more troublesome. That was all. The staff member was very shocked that Xiaoqing and the others returned so quickly. She was very clear about how many zombies those contribution points represented. Many people who tried to change their household registration would be scared away by the contribution points. As for Xiaoqing, how long had she left? She definitely didn't have enough contribution points. Then Xiaoqing clapped her hands. Gu Pan and the others each carried a sack over. They opened the sacks and poured out a pile of nuclei. How many nuclei could 4 or 5 sacks hold? Anyway, there was a small mountain on the ground. The people who were doing other things around were also shocked. They all turned their heads and stared at Xiaoqing. Their jaws dropped. How many nuclei were there? How many zombies did they kill? Let's count. Xiaoqing found a chair and sat down. Then she lazily raised her chin. If it's not enough, I still have more. The staff member was silent for a long time. Then she called a few other idle people to count together. They counted for nearly an hour. Everyone counted until their backs were sore and their eyes were blurry. At the last number, the staff member was also stuck. Because the nuclei in front of her were not only enough for the contribution points, but also far exceeded the requirements. Something like this had never happened before. She actually didn't know what to do next. Since the contribution points are enough, then help us cancel our household registration, Xiaoqing said lightly. The staff member's hands were numb. She couldn't ask her superior. After hesitating for a long time, she took action and canceled the household registration of Xiaoqing and the others. Xiaoqing waved her hand again. Those nuclei were collected. Xiaoqing, who was free, felt that the air was much fresher. She stretched lazily and brought her friends back to pack their things. She also brought Fu Jingma along. When she stepped out of the gate of the base, Xiaoqing was still a little dazed. This was the first base she had lived in. She used to have a home here. But now, she had no choice but to give up this home and start over somewhere else. Along the way, Fu Jingma was quite silent. However, he was very nimble. He often helped Yin Hanqing with cooking and helping out. Even if Xiaoqing didn't like him, she had to admit that Fu Jingma was a decent person. At least, no one could find fault with him. After leaving the base, Xiaoqing and the others rushed to the capital at full speed. It only took them half the usual time to reach the capital. Old Master Qin had already sent someone to wait at the gate of the capital city. As soon as Xiaoqing arrived, that person ran back to report. Hence, when Xiaoqing and the others arrived at the gate of the Qin residence, Old Master Qin was already waiting there. He went up and hugged Little Bun. "My baby, let Grandpa see. Have you lost weight in the past 2 days?" Little Bun puffed up his cheeks. "I haven't lost weight. Grandpa, look, I'm fat and spicy." The old man was amused. Although he really wanted Xiaoqing and the others to continue living in the Qin residence, he knew that Xiaoqing couldn't stay there forever. Hence, Old Master Qin directly said, "I've already found a house for you. Do you want to eat first, or look at the house first?" Xiaoqing immediately said, "Let's go look at the house first." Old Master Qin personally brought Xiaoqing and the others to look at the house. The house that Old Master Qin found was not far from the Qin residence. It only took 3 to 5 minutes to walk. From the outside, it looked like a courtyard house. However, there was something special inside. There was a flower bed and a 2-story bungalow. It looked very nice. Chapter 370. At the very least, it suited Xiaoqing's taste. She looked around and saw that there were some common flowers planted in the flower bed. After eating, she could take a walk around the flower bed to relax. In the middle were 3 small buildings in a triangular shape. Whether it was the decoration or the space, they were all very good. After buying some new bedding, she could move in directly. You only need a level 120 crystal core to buy it. Old Master Qin stroked his beard and said proudly, "This is my old friend's house. I haven't lived in it many times, and almost everything is new." Xiao Qing handed the crystal core to Old Master Qin without hesitation and said, "I've really troubled you this time. I'll treat you to a meal when you're free." "You don't have to. Just treat me to a meal today." The old man blinked his eyes and said bluntly. Xiao Qing laughed involuntarily and said, "Okay." Moving to a new house naturally had to be celebrated. Xiao Qing first took people out to buy new bedding and some vegetables and fruits. She decided to celebrate tonight. No matter what, moving to a new place was worth celebrating. That night, Yin Hanqing cooked a table full of dishes and brought Old Master Qin to celebrate moving. Moving was a big event, so when they celebrated, they couldn't help but drink some wine. In the end, they collapsed all over the floor. Xiao Qing didn't drink much, so she was still relatively sober. She sat by the side and chatted with Old Master Qin. Old Master Qin went straight to the point. "I sent a group of people to keep an eye on the demonic mercenary group all day. In the end, I really found something." Xiao Qing poured a cup of tea for Old Master Qin to sober up and asked, "What did you find?" Old Master Qin stood up and said as he walked, after learning of the source of the smoke, "I sent people to keep an eye on the demonic mercenary group all day and night, afraid that they would do something against human morality. Then, news came from there. At the very least, they have the intention to do that thing." Old Master Qin said with an ugly expression, "I'm really worried that they'll use living people." Xiao Qing knocked on the table and said, "This matter needs to be observed for a while before we can be sure. What I'm most worried about right now is that they might already be making other chemical weapons. Let's wait and see." Old Master Qin sighed. "If we discover that the demonic berserk mercenary group is a malignant tumor, I will definitely bring my men to flatten it. I'll pay attention to it too. I have a feeling that things can't be that simple." Xiao Qing said helplessly. It wasn't that she always had bad intentions and always wondered why those people didn't make a move. It was just that some things were better prepared for a rainy day, especially since Mad Demon had a grudge against her. She was someone who bore grudges. The vengeful Xiao Qing rubbed her chin and prepared to pay attention to Mad Demon's movements at all times. After putting this matter aside, Xiao Qing chatted with Old Master Qin for a long time about the little bun's daily life. She also learned that Qin Zishi had gone out to do a mission again. After all, Qin Zishi was the only child of the Qin family. In the future, he would definitely take over the Qin family's current power. If he didn't have some ability, he wouldn't be able to control the situation and support the Qin family. At this point, Old Master Qin was a little melancholic. In his life, he had experienced ups and downs. It could be said that he was proud of his life. In his old age, his son was quite filial and his grandson was also obedient. There was only one thing that stuck in his heart. That was that his son and grandson were like enemies all day long. But there were some things that he couldn't say. He couldn't blame his son for remarrying after his wife died, right? Or blame his grandson for refusing to accept a stepmother. In the end, the relationship between his son and grandson became more and more strained day by day. Old Master Qin was so worried that his hair had already turned white. Usually, he wouldn't say these things to Xiao Qing. However, today, after drinking a little, he let go. He patted Xiao Qing's shoulder and sighed. "I've never seen Xiaoxi so close to anyone. Ah Qing, if you have the chance, help me persuade him. How can a good father and son live like enemies?" "I'll remember." Xiao Qing supported Old Master Qin and sent him home. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief. She had come back to torment her family. The one who drank the most was Gu Panpan. The others didn't drink much, but unfortunately, they couldn't hold their liquor well. Thus, only Dai and Yin Hanqing were still standing. Even Gu Chuan sat on the sofa in a daze. His face was expressionless, but there was a red cloud on his cheeks. He looked as if nothing had happened, but in fact, he was so drunk that he couldn't tell north from south. In the end, Yin Hanqing was responsible for taking care of Gu Chuan in the room. As she was underage, Xiao Tong, who wasn't allowed to drink, took care of Gu Pan Pan. The little bun was thrown to air die. Xiao Qing carried Yin Chua upstairs. Chapter 371. As long as her enemy was having a hard time, she would have a good time. With this mentality, Xiao Qing deliberately walked over, ready to see what was going on. One side was undoubtedly the members of the demonic mercenary group, while the other side was a man and a woman. There was even a stall on the ground, selling bits and pieces. Xiao Qing didn't need to look to know that it was most likely related to protection fees. She leaned closer to listen. The woman was scolding. "How black-hearted are you? I only earn a few crystal cores a day, and you want half of it? Do you still want me to live?" The person from the demonic mercenary group said, "Everyone is doing business outside. We take people's money and eliminate people's disasters. You're not the only one who pays protection fees. Why do you think it's too much?" The woman sneered and said, "We don't need your protection, okay? I won't pay this protection fee." The leader of the demonic mercenary group sized him up and said with a lewd smile, "It doesn't matter if you don't pay. Pay with your body. Let us brothers do you once, and this month's protection fee will be waived." The woman spat and covered her chest vigilantly. She pursed her lips tightly. She had several orphans to raise in her family. The money she earned from running a stall was only enough to feed the children in her family. When the harvest was good, she could even add some meat to the children in her family. However, these people clearly saw that they were easy to bully. They opened their mouths and wanted to take half of the profits. If these crystal cores were handed over, those children would starve. Therefore, no matter what, the woman was unwilling to compromise. When the man beside her saw this, he hurriedly said, "Isn't it just protection fees? We'll pay." He gritted his teeth and smiled apologetically. "Women have long hair and short knowledge. Don't lower yourself to his level. I'll hand it over right now." He opened his pocket and counted for a long time. He counted 10 crystal cores and was about to hand them over to the demonic mercenary group when the woman's eyes turned red. She snatched the crystal cores and said aggrievedly, "I can't give them to them. Don't forget, little Yang is still sick. I'm counting on today's income to buy him something good to nourish his body. Juan, give me the crystal core." The man hurriedly urged her, but she just held onto the crystal core and refused to give it to him. She didn't give it to him, but instead, it was in line with the demonic mercenary group's thoughts. He smiled and said, "Since you don't want to give me the crystal core, then you can use your body to pay for it." The man hurriedly said, "I'll give it to you right away." Then, he started arguing with the woman. The person from the demonic berserk mercenary group waved his hand indifferently and said, "I'll tell you today. Regardless of whether you give it to us or not, we'll definitely play with this woman." He clapped his hands and said, "Brothers, let's go. We'll have meat in a while, and everyone will have a share." The members of Mad Demon beside him began to jeer excitedly and slowly approached the two of them. The man's expression immediately changed. He shielded the woman behind him and looked at them warily. Seeing that they were really going to do something bad to the woman, the man whispered to the woman, "If the situation turns bad, I'll stop them. You run quickly." The woman grabbed the man's sleeve and gritted her teeth. "It's broad daylight, and there's a patrol team from the capital. How dare you? I'll let you see if we dare." The captain of the demonic berserk mercenary group took a step forward and pushed the man away. He was about to pull the woman into his embrace. The woman retreated in shock. The man hurriedly went forward to stop her. As he stopped her, he shouted, "Run!" At this moment, the remaining members of the demonic berserk mercenary group had already surrounded him. They pressed the man to the ground and punched and kicked him. As for the captain, he grabbed the woman and pulled her into his embrace. The woman tried to resist, but he easily grabbed her hands and wantonly took advantage of her. Chapter 372. The woman's eyes were red from the humiliation. She kept struggling and looked at the people around her for help. However, the people around her did not help her. Instead, they were watching the show. Some of them were even whispering, The patrol team of the capital city passed by. When they saw that it was Mad Devil's men, they left without stopping for a second. Mad Devil's men laughed wildly. The woman's beautiful eyes were filled with tears. Xiao Qing frowned. She did not expect Mad Devil's men to be so arrogant in the capital city. She also did not expect that people's hearts were so cold. Mad Devil's men molested a woman in front of so many people, but no onlookers helped her. Listening to their words, someone even said, "I asked her to pay the protection fee, but she didn't. I think she's just a slut. She's still hoping to be raped by others." Xiao Qing's eyes dropped to the freezing point. Finally, she took a step forward and quickly waved a vine. It wrapped around the woman's waist and pulled her into her arms. Xiao Qing withdrew the vine and hugged the woman in her arms. She covered her torn collar and said faintly, "It's not good to do this to a girl on the street." Mad Devil's man spat and said, "Who's the brave one who dares to meddle in my business?" Then he looked up and saw that it was Xiao Qing. He had seen Xiao Qing and also saw Xiao Qing beat up the masters of his regiment. His angry face suddenly turned into a warm smile. "I was wondering who it was. It's Captain Xiao. What can I do for you, Captain Xiao?" The onlookers were originally gloating over Xiao Qing's misfortune, waiting to see Xiao Qing suffer, but now their jaws dropped to the ground. Xiao Qing glanced at the man who was still being beaten and said, "Ask your men to stop first." The man smiled carelessly and waved his hand. "Okay, I'll give you face. Stop, stop." When those people stopped, the man on the ground got up with a limp. He wiped the corner of his mouth and stood beside Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing patted the back of the woman in her arms, and then said faintly, "It's just a small matter. Why do you have to make such a fuss? It won't look good. Why don't we just call it quits? My face should still carry some weight." Since Captain Xiao has stepped in, then let's forget about this matter. "Captain Xiao, if you're free, why don't you come visit our regiment? Our regiment commander still misses you," that person said with a smile. Xiao Qing faintly responded, "I'll go when I'm free." That person cupped his hands and left with his men. He was a decisive person. He knew that he couldn't win against Xiao Qing, so he might as well give face to Xiao Qing. Xiao Qing wasn't going to give him face. Xiao Qing narrowed her eyes slightly. She was already considering whether to follow them later and see if she could kill them all. After Mad Demon's men left, Xiao Qing coldly glanced around and said, "Let's all go. Don't look at what you shouldn't look at. Otherwise, your eyeballs will run away." Those people saw that even Mad Demon's men didn't want to offend Xiao Qing, so they didn't dare to offend her. They immediately dispersed and did what they were supposed to do. Xiao Qing took off her coat and put it on the woman. Then she said faintly, "Okay, it's fine now. Let's go back." The woman clung to Xiao Qing's shoulder and wailed. Her towering breasts pressed against Xiao Qing's chest, making it difficult for her to breathe. She patted the woman's back and comforted her with great difficulty. The woman hugged her coat and thanked her softly. She was really grateful to Xiao Qing. If Xiao Qing hadn't spoken up for her, she might have been violated in public today. Xiao Qing also held a military knife. Then vines drilled out of the ground and tied people up. She held a knife and went up to kill people. Not to mention the captain of Mad Devil. Even the woman and the man were stunned. Then, they watched their heads fall to the ground one by one. Blood gushed out from their necks and flowed to the ground in an instant, dyeing the ground red. Xiao Qing didn't even give them a chance to speak. She had already killed all of them. The captain of Mad Devil's group saw that the situation was not good. He wanted to run away, but Xiao Qing stretched out her hand and whipped his head. Xiao Qing was very fast. The man and the woman could only see the cold light flashing. In a few minutes, the ground was covered with corpses. After all, with her current strength, killing these few dregs was like cutting grass. If the grass was a little sharper, she might even be able to cut her fingers. However, this group of people couldn't even touch the corner of her clothes. "Benefactor, you should take it back and give it to the child." Xiao Qing said faintly, "I'm giving it to the children, not you." Why are you refusing? Come, take it. It's not much, just 1 piece per person. The woman could only say, all right, take it. Why aren't you thanking Auntie? The children were all very excited. They were reluctant to eat the candy and held it carefully. Xiaoqing sat for a while. Seeing that the sky was getting dark, she said, I still have something to do. I'll leave first. If there's a chance in the future, I'll come to see you. Benefactor, you're not staying for dinner? The woman bit her lower lip and said disappointedly, my cooking skills are very good. Xiaoqing shook her head. I still have something to do. Then, she left with air dye. When she left, the woman and the man took the children to send her off. After Xiaoqing left, the first thing she did was to dispose of the corpses. The corpses were too close to the woman's house. Today, outside the city, the woman had a conflict with Mad Demon's people. Xiaoqing was worried that Mad Demon's people would find out about her. So, she specially cleaned up the scene and destroyed the corpses. At least, she didn't want to implicate them. After leaving, Xiaoqing touched her chin and pondered. She had heard the Mad Demon's team leader say something. Originally, it was like this. Someone beside him suggested to fry the woman first and then kill her. However, he sneered and said, she made me lose face. How can I let her die so easily? Aren't we lacking 2 test subjects? I'll just use her to make up the numbers. Could the test subjects here be related to the previous chemical weapons? Yin Qiyu moved her hand away from Xiaoqing's chest and said calmly, I just saw a strand of hair. I've already taken it off. Then, he was kicked off the bed by Xiaoqing. Air dye immediately occupied Xiaoqing's arms and acted cute. After being enlightened by Yin Qiyu, Xiaoqing naturally put those troublesome things behind her and focused on strengthening her ability. Now that she was at level 5, she could find another mutated plant to subdue. Currently, the mutated plants in her hands were vines, man-eating flowers, and dodder. Among them, the man-eating flowers were not very useful unless they were used to kill low-level zombies. The dodder was only suitable for dealing with humans. As for the auxiliary plant, it was more suitable for large-scale battles. Moreover, it could not be known. Once it was known, the enemy would be on guard and it would be useless. If she subdued another mutated plant, she would mainly consider the auxiliary plant, which could assist her teammates, or her own ability. Chapter 376. However, there was no need to rush. It all depended on fate. On the 3rd day after moving into the new house, Old Master Qin sent a message saying that nothing unusual had been found. He had sent people to monitor the higher-ups of Mad Devil, but they hadn't found anything related to human experiments. However, when collecting information, the Qin family had discovered that many ordinary people had gone missing. These missing people often didn't have any relatives or friends, didn't have high status, or lived alone. Therefore, after they went missing, no one would look for them. After a while, the existence of these people had faded away. After all, it was the end of the world, and human lives were the most worthless. It was normal for a few people to go missing. Perhaps some paranormal didn't like you and killed you, and you wouldn't be able to complain. However, more and more people went missing, and some people with relatives also went missing. Only then did someone report the case. However, even if the case was reported, it would become an unsolved case because no one could find the missing people. Old Master Qin felt that this matter was very strange. Where did all the missing people go? Even if there were a few people who offended some powerful paranormal and were killed, it was impossible for all the thousands of people to offend paranormal, right? Old Master Qin's intuition told him that this matter might be related to Mad Devil. Xiaoqing also felt that it was related to Mad Devil. After all, if they wanted to do human experiments, they must have test subjects. So, where did the test subjects come from? These people who lived alone and didn't have any relatives or friends were very likely to become the prey of Mad Devil. After all, even if they went missing or died, no one would do anything for them. After reading the message that Old Master Qin gave her, Xiaoqing didn't have any clue. She contacted Zhu Machin and prepared to go out with him. Zhu Machin and Wu Buping had been at odds for a long time, So maybe he knew something. As soon as Xiao Qing said that she wanted to go out, two people followed her. One was Yin Qiue, and the other was Dai. When they heard that Xiao Qing wanted to go out with a man, they automatically ignored the man's name and insisted on going out with her. Xiao Qing couldn't do anything about it, so when she went out, she brought 2 pieces of sticky candy with her. Zhu Machin had come by himself. They had arranged to meet at a small restaurant so they could have a meal together. Then, when Zhu Machin arrived, he saw that Xiao Qing was standing on either side of him. There wasn't the slightest hint of a private conversation going on. Xiao Qing helplessly invited Zhu Machin to sit down and then handed him the menu. They didn't come out to eat, so Zhu Machin ordered 2 of his favorite dishes and then returned the menu. After the waiter left, Xiao Qing chatted with Zhu Machin about the things that had happened to her recently. However, she turned everything she had seen and heard into guesses. Then Xiao Qing said, "I called you out this time mainly to ask if you know anything about mad demons." Zhu Machin thought for a moment, then said, "Because of many reasons, Mad Demon and I don't like each other. You should know that. The more hostile we are, the more we try to understand each other. I was like that for a period of time. I carefully studied Mad Demon, but I didn't find anything wrong with him until recently." "Who?" Xiao Qing asked curiously. "Guan Haishan. You probably don't know this name. He represented one of Mad Demon's 3 vice-commanders, but he died a long time ago. However, I saw him again a while ago," Zhu Machin said with a serious expression. "I felt that something was wrong at the time, but I didn't have time to verify that person's identity, so I couldn't confirm if he was really Guan Haishan." Chapter 377. When he said this, Xiao Qing also felt that something was wrong. She felt that there was something fishy about the appearance of a person who had already been declared dead. If Guan Haishan wasn't dead, then why did Mad Demon announce that Guan Haishan was dead? If Guan Haishan was dead, then the person who appeared now, who was it? After chatting with Zhu Machin, Xiao Qing felt that her head hurt even more. This matter was too complicated. Immediately after, Xiao Qing was attacked on her way home. Because she didn't consider that she would be attacked on the streets of Jingdu, she didn't take any precautions. It was Dai, who had sharp senses, who was the first to pounce on her. When Xiao Qing looked up, she saw that there was a bullet hole where she was originally standing. This meant that a sniper was secretly aiming at her. If it wasn't for Dai, she would have been seriously injured at the very least. As soon as she found the bullet hole, Xiao Qing immediately pulled Yin Qiue and Dumbo and leaped onto the wall. Based on the shape of the bullet hole, she could almost guess the position of the sniper in the dark. Therefore, the wall facing the sniper was the safest. This was the same principle as the darkness under the light. Xiao Qing stuck close to the wall. After a long time, she suddenly rolled forward, exposing herself to the sniper's muzzle. She was already prepared to dodge, but the bullet didn't come. Dai was like a dexterous monkey. She quickly found the sniper's original position based on the angle of the bullet hole and other principles. However, there was only a slender bullet shell left. Someone tried to kill Xiao Qing. This knowledge made the 3 of them feel a little heavy. Then, who wanted to kill Xiao Qing? The most likely person was undoubtedly Wu Buping. First of all, she had previously ruined Wu Buping's plan. Then, she had a conflict with Mad Demon's people at the city gate in public. Most importantly, the people who had a conflict with her never returned to Mad Demon. They couldn't be found even if they were alive or dead. In terms of hatred, the one who wanted her to die the most was undoubtedly Mad Demon. Maybe someone had locked onto her when she just went out. That was the reason for the assassination attempt of fleeing thousands of miles away after failing to hit the target. This assassination could be said to be all bark and no bite, but it made Xiao Qing instantly vigilant. If a person like Wu Buping wanted someone to die, he would definitely do anything. This assassination was definitely not the end. It was just the beginning. Xiao Qing was in danger. "Let's go back first," Xiao Qing said expressionlessly. The few of them quickly left the scene, but they did not encounter a second assassination along the way. They told Gu Panpan and the others about this matter, hoping that they would be more careful when they went out. After all, They didn't know if the person in the dark would target Gu Pan and the others after the assassination failed. It's most likely the Mad Demon Mercenary Group. Xiao Qing held her chin and said calmly, "After all, we don't have many enemies. The only one who urgently wants my life is probably Mad Demon." Xiao Qing said faintly, "I've been thinking about whether I should participate in the investigation of Mad Demon. At present, it seems that Mad Demon is not ready to give up on me. Strike first and gain the upper hand." Yin Hanqing calmly thought for a long time before saying, "If it's really Mad Demon who did this to you, then it means that they have a guilty conscience. If they have a guilty conscience, it's easy to reveal flaws." Xiao Qing nodded and said, "What I mean is, when everyone goes out, it's best to be careful. Try not to go out alone. Otherwise, I'm really worried." The few of them nodded and promised that they would try their best to stay at home for the next few days and not go out. After telling her friends, Xiao Qing also brought the news to Old Master Qin, hoping that with Old Master Qin's identity, he could find out something. After that, Xiao Qing was not plotted against or assassinated again. The assassination that day was like a flash in the pan, or even not a flash in the pan. She could almost confirm that the person who did this was indeed Mad Demon. After all, not everyone had the ability to assassinate her on the streets of the capital. Xiao Qing felt that being so passive was not her style. After thinking for a long time, she decided to lure the snake out of its hole. If she didn't kill this snake, she would be on tenterhooks when she took her friends out to do missions. She was worried that someone would jump out at this time to assassinate her or her friends. This was too passive. It was completely disadvantageous for her and her friends. However, luring the snake out of its hole was also a skill. Although the Mad Demon Mercenary Group was very powerful and dared to assassinate her on the streets of the capital, they definitely couldn't do anything in the capital. Therefore, Xiao Qing decided that she would go and be the bait. Soon, Old Master Qin provided her with a beautiful excuse to go out. Chapter 378. Old Master Qin had found some information about the Mad Devil Mercenary Group's secret experimental base. Although it was just a groundless accusation, it was just right to lure the snake out of its hole. In fact, at the very beginning, Old Master Qin refused to let Xiao Qing go out and take risks. He always felt that it was best for a girl like Xiao Qing to stay at home safely. It was too dangerous to lure the snake out of its hole. However, how could Xiao Qing stay at home safely? She refused Old Master Qin's kindness and only took 2 people with her, Yin Qiue and Air Dai. Originally, she didn't even plan to take Yin Qiue, but Yin Qiue insisted on following her. She couldn't do anything about it. The place they were going to this time wasn't too close to the capital. It was a base in the north of the capital. This base was very small, so small that it didn't even have a name. Occasionally, when people mentioned this base, they would say that there was a base in the north next to a forest. This base was so small, but it was such a small base that the Mad Devil Mercenary Group sent people there again and again. According to the information Old Master Qin gave her, there would be people from the Mad Devil Mercenary Group going to that small base every week. Sometimes it was on the surface, sometimes it was a small mercenary group that belonged to the Mad Devil Mercenary Group secretly. In short, there would always be people from the Mad Devil Mercenary Group going to that base 3 to 5 times a month. Such a small base, without any special products or places that others would pay attention to, why would it attract people from the Mad Devil Mercenary Group over and over again? Therefore, this base most likely had a problem. Of course, the most important thing was to lure the snake out of its hole. After Xiao Qing left the capital, she took Yin Qiue and Air Dai to the small base leisurely. The itinerary wasn't urgent. In addition, she was worried that if they walked too fast, the people following them would be shaken off. Therefore, she treated this trip as a vacation. She walked slowly, looked at the beautiful scenery, rested wherever she went, and cooked wherever she went. It was so beautiful that it didn't seem like the end of the world. The people who were following behind were gritting their teeth. They had already sent a message to their superiors. They had already set up an inescapable net in front of them and were waiting for Xiao Qing. However, Xiao Qing was leisurely and leisurely. She didn't look like she was in a hurry, nor did she look like she was going to investigate. She looked like she was simply traveling. At night, Xiaoqing and the others would set up their tents and look for wild animals and vegetables nearby. They would eat different kinds of food every day. Today they would eat barbecue, tomorrow they would eat hot pot, and the day after tomorrow they would eat several dishes with white rice. What about them? He dared not sleep at night, for fear that Xiaoqing and the others would disappear when he opened his eyes. While Xiaoqing and the others were eating delicacies, the few of them were gnawing on dry food. In fact, they used to eat hardtack and dry food that was hard enough to break their teeth. At that time, they didn't feel too bad and were used to eating it. However, when there was a comparison, there would be hurt, especially when the fragrance of Xiaoqing's cooking drifted to the tip of their nose. The days of gnawing on dry food were particularly unbearable. The few of them couldn't wait to tear apart Xiaoqing and the others alive. If you have the ability to wander around, then leave quickly if you have the ability. If you have the ability to investigate, then do it properly if you have the ability to do so. Originally, the few of them thought that this job was very simple and easy. They bit on the dry food and almost cried. When they thought that they would have to live like this for a few days, they felt even more sad. Xiaoqing and the others' days could be said to be very happy. For example, this afternoon, Dai caught several pheasants back. They didn't encounter any other wild animals. Xiaoqing thought about it and prepared chicken soup with rice. Chapter 379. The rice wasn't the kind that was grown in the bases, but the old rice that was left behind before the apocalypse. After the apocalypse, some researchers developed a drug that could allow the rice to be cooked 4 times a year. Since then, most of the bases no longer lacked food. At least, there would not be more people starving to death because they did not have enough food to eat. It could be said that most of the bases had enough food and clothing. This kind of rice tasted slightly worse than the rice from peacetime. However, in the apocalypse, being able to fill one's stomach was already the greatest gift from the heavens. Who would care if the rice tasted worse? However, for someone as picky as Xiaoqing, they would definitely eat the old rice from before the apocalypse. When she went out to do missions, she would pay attention to food. As long as there was food, she would put it into her little treasury. Of course, she would eat the best food for her family. After the pheasants were cleaned, Xiaoqing put a lot of mushrooms and wood ears into their stomachs and cooked them in a pot. There was no need to put too much seasoning. Only a little oil and salt, and then a little star anise was enough. After the rice was out of the pot, chicken soup was poured over it. The mushrooms in the pheasant's stomachs were taken out as side dishes. Every grain of rice was wrapped in sparkling soup. It looked very appetizing. Those who were hiding in the dark were biting their own hands. They were about to cry. They also wanted to eat rice, drink chicken soup, and eat chicken. They did not want to eat hardtack, especially when they smelled the rich aroma. They felt like they were chewing wax. They could not swallow it. After the apocalypse, who would bring pots and pans when they go out? Who would cook rice and stew chicken soup when they eat in the wild? It was so torturous. Most importantly, not only did they have to endure this kind of abuse, they also had to watch the 3 of them being lovey-dovey every day. Their eyes were going blind, especially that guy called Yin Chiue. If he did not act coquettishly once in 3 minutes, there would be something wrong with his head. Have you ever seen such a coquettish man? After enduring for 5 whole days, they really wanted to rebel. If it wasn't for the fact that victory was right in front of them, they really wanted to jump out and let Xiaoqing give them a quick death. The only thing that supported them now was that they were getting closer and closer to the trap they had set up. As long as Xiaoqing and the others stepped into the trap, they would no longer have to suffer this kind of torture. On the 6th day, Xiaoqing finally arrived at the nameless base, the forest outside. She heard that there was a pond in the forest, and the water here was not polluted. There were even live fish inside. Xiaoqing was not interested in the pond. She led the 2 into the forest. As long as they passed through the forest, they would reach the nameless base. When they arrived at the base, they could take a shower, change their clothes, and have a good sleep. Xiaoqing was looking forward to it. She bit her nails and thought about what to eat for dinner. On the surface, she looked very relaxed, but in fact, the moment she stepped into the forest, her whole person became vigilant. Her whole body's muscles were tensed up to a perfect state, ready to attack at any time. If something unexpected happened, such as an assassin from the sky, she could react in an instant. As Xiaoqing walked forward, she suddenly smelled a faint fragrance. That fragrance was very faint, very light, and very pleasant to the nose. It was just like her autumn flowers, making people unknowingly fall for it. Xiaoqing's sense of smell was very good. The key was that she and Erdai would not fall for it because they were zombies. Most of the poison was transmitted through blood, and the blood of zombies was pitifully small. Chapter 380. Moreover, all poisons targeted the human body. Zombies were just walking corpses. How could they be afraid of poisons? However, Yin Chiyue was different. He was a living person. Among the three of them, he was the only one who would be poisoned. While Yin Chiyue was walking, he was suddenly stopped by Xiaoqing. Then, Xiaoqing kissed him. Without any warning, she kissed him. Yin Chiyue was stunned. His heart was filled with joy like fireworks. It filled his brain and his heart. His blood flowed faster, like a torrent hitting a reef. Then, something was pushed into his mouth by the tip of her soft tongue. Yin Chiyue was stunned. He silently swallowed the thing. It was the antidote he made. In order to seal it well, he sealed it in a candy-like shell and turned it into a colorful ball. This time, it was Erdai who almost went crazy. He screamed and pulled Xiaoqing. He looked at Xiaoqing with grievance. How could Xiaoqing kiss someone else? She didn't even kiss him. Xiaoqing felt guilty under his gaze. Even if she had a legitimate reason for her actions just now, she still felt guilty. In the end, she couldn't help but lean over and kiss Dumbo. After all, she should be fair. Erdai was comforted. He held Xiaoqing's hand tightly. The people who were following them thought, "Fuck, it's too much. Let's go." Xiaoqing fed the antidote to Yin Chiyue and heaved a sigh of relief. She continued to lead the two people deeper into the cave. The fragrance gradually faded. When the fragrance was almost faintly discernible, Xiaoqing stopped. "What's wrong?" Yin Chiyue also stopped and asked in a low voice. Xiaoqing didn't say anything. She looked around and then picked up a thick branch. She poked the ground one step ahead. Then, the ground collapsed. The pit and the sharp blades at the bottom of the pit were exposed. Yin Chiyue looked at the row of sharp blades and couldn't help but feel cold. The few of you are sneakily hiding in the dark and using such despicable methods. It is truly laughable. You dare to scheme against me, but don't tell me you don't dare to come out and see me? Xiaoqing coldly said. As soon as she finished speaking, a big net suddenly flew towards them. Xiaoqing hurriedly pulled Yin Chiyue and Erdai. The three of them rolled on the ground and went under the net. Dozens of paranormals came out from all over the place, forming an encirclement. The ones who acted faster were the long-range paranormals who were still hiding in the dark. Before the dozens of paranormals could get close to Xiaoqing, countless icicles, earth thorns, fireballs, wind blades, and water columns had already enveloped Xiaoqing and the others. Xiaoqing raised her hands. Vines weaved into a thick net, covering the three of them. No matter how fierce those paranormals were, they couldn't break the net and fall on their heads. At this time, the dozens of paranormals were close to them. One of the fastest paranormals had already rolled in front of Xiaoqing. He thrust two ice blades forward and stabbed toward Xiaoqing's stomach. Erdai stretched out his foot and stepped on the man's hand easily. Then, he kicked the man's head off his neck with his other foot. No one knew how much strength Erdai used, but he kicked the man's head off his neck. His head was almost torn off while he was still alive. Blood spurted out like a fountain and dyed Xiaoqing's trousers red. Xiaoqing's hand gesture changed, and the net of vines above her head instantly dispersed, turning into vines that spread out in all directions. Mad Demon had really put in a lot of effort this time. Among the paranormals who came to surround her, each of them was at least a level 3 paranormals, and a few of them had reached level 4. Don't forget that there were also those long-range paranormals hiding in the dark. Their strength was definitely not weaker than the 20 or so paranormals. Chapter 381. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to withstand such a lineup. Even those paranormals who thought they were the best paranormals in the country and the world wouldn't be able to survive if they fell into such an ambush. Just by looking at this lineup, it really felt like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife. However, they weren't destined to be butcher's knife, and Xiaoqing wouldn't be the chicken waiting to be slaughtered. As soon as the ambushers rushed up, they found that Xiaoqing's vines were very scary. 3 of the weakest paranormals were pierced through by several vines. The vines shook lazily, and one of their corpses was torn apart and scattered on the ground. Those with higher levels could still fight, but don't forget that Xiaoqing wasn't alone. Yin Qiyue and Air Dai were beside her. Air Dai reacted the fastest. He jumped up and didn't go far. He just stood beside Xiaoqing and harvested their heads under the cover of the vines. Yin Qiyue was even more domineering. He stood still beside Xiaoqing like a mountain, his hands shaking as if he was conducting an orchestra. He waved his hands up and down, and from time to time, someone was squeezed into a meat patty by his ability to control the air. Those people looked at him. No, they had to get rid of Yin Qiyue first, so that they could fight Xiaoqing head-on. Then, they found that they couldn't even get close to Xiaoqing. The octopus-like vines almost filled the space around Xiaoqing. Occasionally, there were 2 paranormals who escaped and broke through the blockade of the vines. Air Dai was responsible for harvesting their heads. They had lost several lives, but they hadn't even touched the hem of Xiaoqing's clothes. The situation is tense. Retreat. Someone shouted in the dark, and those paranormals who had suddenly appeared retreated like a tide. But would Xiaoqing let them go? What a joke. They wanted to assassinate her, so they came to kill her. But when they saw that they couldn't win, they ran away. How could there be such a good thing in the world? Stay here. Xiaoqing sneered. The vines in her hand were like living pythons, choosing people to devour. As long as they were targeted, they would not be able to escape. One of them was a level 4 wind elementalist. His speed was extremely fast, and when he couldn't avoid it, he could even glide for a short time. He thought he could escape, but a vine suddenly wrapped around his ankle. The vines only tugged at him, temporarily immobilizing him. This immobilizing time was only about a second. What could he do in a second? He was able to make Air Dai appear behind him and tear his body apart. As a level 4 paranormal, he shouldn't have been killed so easily, but he had lost his will to fight. All he could think about was how to escape, and he didn't consider that he was stronger than Air Dai. In addition, he thought that he had escaped from a hopeless situation and relaxed. Suddenly, he was killed by Air Dai, who was weaker than him. On the other side, Xiaoqing didn't plan to let anyone go. She pretended to be poisoned and said in a low voice, "Let them go." Then, her body swayed weakly. Air Dai and Yin Qiyue immediately returned to her side. Yin Qiyue's acting was the worst. He held his forehead and collapsed on Xiaoqing's body. I'm a little dizzy." Xiaoqing couldn't help but twitch her mouth. She pretended to be, "I'm poisoned. The poison is so strong, but I have to pretend that I'm not poisoned." That person didn't go far. After all, they still had the poison as their trump card. Seeing that Xiaoqing and Yin Qiyue were really poisoned, those people became restless again. The leader waved his hand and stopped everyone from leaving. Then, he quietly brought his people back. He approached Xiaoqing and took a look. Xiaoqing's face was a little pale, and her body was a little swaying. She looked like she had been poisoned, but she was holding on and not letting herself show it. He was very surprised and didn't shout anymore. He immediately waved his hand. "Go. Here's the chance." Xiaoqing also waved her hand secretly. "Here's the chance. Don't let anyone escape." Chapter 382. After everyone entered Xiaoqing's attack range, Xiaoqing calmly clapped her hands. Countless vines drilled out of the ground. They were like bones walking in a graveyard. As long as it was a living person, they would quickly be entangled by the vines. The range was too large. Almost all of the assassins were within the range. The only one who was outside the range was scared stiff. Then, he was easily swallowed by the man-eating flower that drilled out from behind him. The man-eating flower was like a king patrolling his territory. It slowly moved among the people bound by the vines. Whenever it saw a prey, it would open its flower crown and swallow it. The flower was only so big, but after swallowing 6 or 7 people, it burped to show that it was full. Shao Qing controlled the vines and quickly tightened them into the bodies of those people. There was also Yin Qiwei on the side, who was responsible for the fish that escaped the net that almost broke free. After the poison was injected into those people's bodies through the thorns, it wouldn't be long before those living people became skin bags filled with countless liquids. The vines absorbed the liquids through the thorns. In the end, only a piece of useless human skin was left lying flat on the ground. This was a terrifying scene. If other people saw it, they would definitely be scared to the point of wetting their pants. However, Yin Qiwei was so stimulated that he almost became aroused. He clung tightly to Shao Qing's body and said as if he was dreaming, "Sometimes, I really want to be eaten by you and become one with you. Then, even if you don't like me, you won't be able to reject me." Shao Qing smiled and showed 2 sharp canine teeth. "Get lost." He said it as if she had that kind of special hobby. Even if she was a zombie, she was a zombie that paid attention to her diet and health, okay? Only brainless beasts and those brainless zombies would eat people like humans, who looked good on the outside but emitted a rotten stench on the inside. Then, Shao Qing cleaned up the scene. She didn't find anything that could prove the identity of these people. Shaking the man-eating flowers and vines, she took Yin Qiwei and Air Dai to the entrance of the base. When they arrived at the entrance of the base, only Shao Qing and Yin Qiwei were left. Air Dai had already sneaked into the base. Although she was using the excuse of luring the snake out of its hole this time, she really came out to investigate. If she could find what she wanted, of course, it would be for the best. Mad Demon's men would definitely be keeping a close eye on her. The people in the base would also know in advance that she was coming. In that case, why not make her in existence like a target and attract everyone's attention? Then, let Dummy go in and investigate. As soon as Shao Qing and Yin Qiwei appeared at the gate of the base, the 2 guards who were lazily guarding the gate were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell to the ground. They had already received the news that Shao Qing had absolutely no chance to pass through the woods. However, not only did Shao Qing come out, but she also appeared in front of them unscathed. How could they not be shocked and their eyeballs fell to the ground? However, they reacted quickly. One of them quickly turned around, probably running to report the news. The other one came up with a forced, flattering expression, then said, "You 2 look very powerful, super-powered people at first glance. May I know what business you have in our base?" Shao Qing talked nonsense with a serious face. "We are here to travel." The corner of the man's mouth twitched. What's so good about traveling in this broken place? There were no mountains in front and no water behind, and it couldn't be any smaller. Why would normal people come here to travel? Chapter 383. Stop fooling around. Okay, but he didn't dare to refute. After all, he felt guilty. So he said shamelessly, "Yes, yes, we have beautiful scenery here. There are many tourists here, ha ha ha." The more he laughed, the more dry he became. In the end, he stopped. He probably couldn't lie anymore. Shao Qing asked very kindly, "Is there any procedure to enter your base?" "No," he said reflexively. After saying that, he felt that his reaction was not right. After all, how could he let people in without checking? So he quickly made up for it. "You 2 are obviously powerful paranormals. If you are an ordinary person, you still need to be checked. You 2 don't need to." "That's great." Shao Qing smiled and led Yin Qiwei in. The moment Shao Qing entered, the man leaned against the doorframe. His legs were like noodles, and he was sweating profusely. Motherfucker. Motherfucker. It turns out that lying is so difficult. As soon as Shao Qing led Yin Qiwei in, they saw a few people coming toward them. The leader was a young man. He looked very handsome, especially his eyes, which were smart and cunning. As soon as he saw Shao Qing, he strode to greet them. Oh, such powerful paranormals coming to our base is really a great honor. Please come in." What are you two doing in our base? Xiaoqing continued to talk nonsense with a serious face. Traveling. Yin Qiue immediately added. Honeymoon. The young man was much more shrewd than the gatekeeper. His smile didn't change, and then he said enthusiastically, if it's a trip, then it's best. You two must stay for a few more days. I'll show you around and see our place. You two can also tell me about the changes in the capital. I haven't been there for almost half a year. Xiaoqing asked calmly, how do you know that we came from the capital? The young man was stunned for a moment, but he quickly reacted. He chuckled and said, powerful paranormals like you two. Where else could you come from? Besides, coming from the south, there's an 80% to 90% chance that you'll have to pass through the capital, so I made a guess. Did I get it right? If you're right, there's no prize, Xiaoqing said expressionlessly. Even the shrewd young man couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed because of Xiaoqing's extremely cold and unoriginal joke. He laughed dryly and said, you're all my friends from afar. I'll treat you two to dinner tonight. You must come. Of course, the most important thing now is to arrange the accommodation for the two teams. Please follow me. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Guan Haishan. Xiaoqing's gaze instantly sharpened. Guan Haishan? The person that Zhu Machun said had died many years ago? She couldn't help but take a closer look at Guan Haishan. He had delicate features and fair skin. If you ignored everything else and just looked at his appearance, he actually looked like a pretty boy. Thus, Xiaoqing silently reached out and touched Guan Haishan's face. It was as fair and tender as it looked, with a hint of warmth. He didn't look like a dead person, and he definitely didn't look like someone who had died many years ago. Yin Qiue grabbed Xiaoqing's hand and said with a bitter expression, didn't you say that you only love me? Why are you touching him? Isn't it good to touch me? Xiaoqing continued to talk nonsense with a deadpan expression. There's a fly on his face. Guan Haishan was speechless. Then, Guan Haishan walked in with an expression that said, we're serious people. The accommodation that he arranged for Xiaoqing and Yin Qiue was right next to his. It was the largest and most spacious place in the entire base aside from the base chief's residence. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.